Welcome back to the Wizard Shop, and today we're going to look at this Chrysler Crossfire. Crossfire! Let's get started. So I almost had a slip up there, guys. I almost called it a Mercedes SLK. Well, it is one underneath all this. This is a German car with American clothes on. I don't even know that they're nice of clothes, but anyways, it is a pretty cool car. This one rolled into the shop with no start. Literally just was pushed in, it was rolled in, it wouldn't even run. That's the only problem with the car, and we're going to show you what we found, fixed it. It's a common Mercedes problem, but we're going to see if you guys can figure it out today. We'll also check this car over and let you guys see that on top of here it looks like an American Chrysler, but as we start digging deep, it is a Mercedes-Benz through and through. Let's go ahead and look around the car. Looks like a Chrysler Sebring, but underneath the sheep's clothing is the wolf called a Mercedes SLK. It's got some fading on the hood. The car's in decent shape. It's not real bad. And has some really nice cast wheels. This is being a 2007 Chrysler Crossfire. Has some more Chrysler-esque looking fins on the side, trying to make it look sporty. No dents or dings as we go down the side. And there's the rear end that just curves really sharply. Terminates at the end where it says Crossfire. You can see that it's actually had a little fender bender there. This has a little wing that will come up when you get up to certain speeds. There's the rear hatch. A few bumps and bruises here, but nothing that's really that bad. When you go down this side, it's also pretty nice. Whenever I initially go over a car before working on it, I look at things like what you're looking at there. The brake rotors are completely coated in rust. That tells me that it hasn't started in a long time and it's been sitting for a while. This is not something that popped up yesterday. It's been a problem for a while. So before we dive in under the hood, let's go ahead and take a look at the interior. There's some things in there that are not stock.
So ladies and gents, as we see there, it does say it does have 120,454 miles on it. So this has been driven. It's earned those marks and scuffs out there on the body. And as you see back there, it's looking pretty good. It's a nice 67 degrees here in the shop today. And look at that dash. It's in really good shape. There is a lot of hard plastic in here that is very Chrysler-esque. The door cards have a nice dark and then goes to a lighter plastic. And again, lots of chrome accents. There's chrome accents on the outside and there is in here as well. As we move to the center console area, we can see just simple dial controls. They definitely have been listening to the radio. You can tell because they've definitely done some wear on that volume knob. It does look like we've got some creature comforts there. We've got some heated seats, got some other buttons just that makes life easier to get in and out of the car. It does have a nice little hidey hole right here. He's got a little bit of change in there. I guess he can hit the car wash after we're done here. One thing that has been changed is this gear shifter. And you can see that it is a 6-speed, so it would be a blast to drive this thing. But this is definitely a different addition to the car than what was stock. Again, simple little console. That seat there, it is a leather seat. It's got two-tone gray on it, and it's in good shape. It's got a little bit of bolster on the side, so you can be going around those corners with some grip into your seat. And there is no back seat, but there is a little bit of a hatch area with the tire back there, it looks like, but we could probably get some groceries in here. So this could become a nice car for us, at least a couple. Headliner wise, great shape, nothing going on, no sagging, no marks. I do notice here on the ridge here that there is kind of a lower section here, and on the top of the roof there was actually a ridge there going the other direction. So it's nice that they've continued that design element in here as well. One thing you may have not noticed when we were looking at the dash and the mileage earlier was the steering wheel. We didn't really focus on it then, but we are now. It's an NRG Innovation steering wheel. So it's definitely got a nice race mode to it, definitely easy to grip and, take it around those corners. Otherwise, this is looking really pretty good. I'm really curious to see the German components. let's check out what's underneath the hood.
Ooh, it's so deceptive, guys. It says Crossfire on it. What is this? Is it a Dodge 3.5? Is it possibly a 2.7? It is none of the above. Let's take this air cleaner off. And here we have a Mercedes 272 V6, a 3.2 liter, 215 horsepower and 230 pound-feet of torque. Any of you guys who are gearheads probably saw the valve covers and the intake and the coils and said, oh yep, that's a Mercedes engine. As you can see right here, a Mercedes emblem. Right here on the brake master cylinder reservoir, another Mercedes emblem. Also we see that the top line on the oil cap is in German. All over the place, you keep looking, you'll find Mercedes emblems all over this engine. These are actually very reliable, and I hope that this isn't the one with the timing chain problems, but other than that, they are actually a very good engine. Let's talk about why it's here. So as you just saw, as we looked around the engine, there is lots of room all around it. It's very easy to work on, and the SLK and the Crossfire is no exception. Like I just mentioned, this one came in with no start. You could crank it forever, but it will not start. So I'm going to play the guessing game again and see if you guys can figure it out. I'll list 4 options of what it could be, and you let me know in the comments which one it is. So is it number 1, fuel pump? Is it number 2, the mass airflow sensor? Is it number 3, the crankshaft position sensor? Or is it number 4, the ignition switch? Okay, so now that you've got your answers in the comment section, we will go over all 4 of those real quick. Number 1, is it the fuel pump? It's very easy to test on these. You turn the key on, you take the Schrader valve cover off, and use a little screwdriver just to push the Schrader valve lightly in. It should spray. If the fuel pump was dead, so much so that it won't even start, you would push the Schrader valve in and nothing would happen. This one has plenty of fuel pressure. That is not the problem. Is it number 2, the mass airflow sensor? No, it is not. And one of the ways you can check that is just unplug the mass airflow sensor and try to start it. It will revert to a standard set of settings so it can at least run the engine, and it will start if the airflow sensor was bad, but that is not the case. Is it number 3, the crankshaft position sensor? Yes. We all know about the E500s, the E320s, the E350s. It's really kind of a common Mercedes problem, especially when the engine would get hot, the engine would stall. Or a no start problem. Crank sensor failure is very common on these. Magic Mike was able to get an oscilloscope and voltmeter and did some testing and found out there is nothing coming from the crank sensor. And we all know when the ECM does not see a signal from the crank sensor, you're telling it the engine's turning, but the computer is saying, no it's not. I can look right there at the crank sensor and it says 0 RPMs, it says nothing. So guess what? I'm not turning on the ignition, I'm not turning on anything for this engine because it's not even turning over. But it is turning over. The computer doesn't know that because it can't see anything. The crank sensor is bad. We've got a new one on order, and once it's installed, this thing will fire right up. And obviously, if it was number 4, the ignition switch, no, it's not that. We were able to turn the key on, accessories come on, everything is working just fine. It actually cranks. But let me show you where this crankshaft position sensor is located. It is a very common failure on these engines. So as you can see, a big open hole down there. That is where the crank sensor goes, and it gets a reading off of a tone ring that is on the flywheel. And that is where this goes, the crankshaft position sensor. It only has 2 terminals, 2 wires that go to it. And as the tone ring passes by this, it gives a signal to the ECM to let it know kind of what's going on with the engine. So we got one of these on order, we'll get it installed, and it will get this thing back on the road. That's all the customer wanted. They didn't want anything else done or really anything messed with. They just want their car to run again. And this will solve it. Let's go ahead and get this thing on the lift and show you guys more Mercedes-Benz. before we get this thing on the lift. I know a lot of you car guys out there will be like, we knew this was a Mercedes-Benz. This is not new information. We already knew this, Car Wizard. But you have to keep in mind, for the 10, 20, 30% of you guys that are car gurus, there's a whole slew of people that don't know this information. And that's why this channel exists, to give everyone an equal opportunity to learn things about cars, to find out things they didn't know. Just because you knew about that doesn't mean we should shut it down, don't mention it, and leave the other people hanging. So this is very good information. Let's get this thing on the lift. So let's take a quick look underneath this Chrysler SLK, whatever you want to call it. You can see our condenser and radiator is right here. Everything is nice and dry. There's a few bugs in it, but that's to be expected. Nothing going on there. Go to the oil pan, everything's nice and dry. There is some oil seepage coming from either side. It's actually the valve cover gaskets, and we will let the customer know about that and see if they want to proceed. But the main goal this time around was to get their car running again. Brake pads are nice and thick. Nothing loose there. The shock is nice and dry. Everything looks good there. Our steering stabilizer is nice and dry. This does not have a steering rack. It has the old style gearbox, as you can see up there, which is nice and dry as well. There's some more of our valve cover gaskets leaking there. We go to this side, brakes are good. Everything's nice and tight. Look guys, another Mercedes emblem. Transmission is a manual and it is nice and dry. Everything looks good there. Here's a transmission mount that's collapsed. You guys know on these Mercedes I like to find these. I can put my whole pinky on the top of that one. Look at the gap, guys. So transmission mount might be something we present to the customer. We'll also take a look real quick at the motor mounts while we're there. They look fine. Just the transmission mount is definitely collapsed. Here's our flex disc, and it looks good. More Mercedes parts. Here's a U-joint, and it's nice and tight. Another flex disc. Look, another Mercedes emblem. Oh no, another one. Made in Germany, Mercedes-Benz. Check the brakes back here. Looks good. The shock is nice and dry. Nothing loose there. Brakes are good, shock is dry. Sway bar link is good. Nothing loose there. Our CV boots are good. CV boots on this side are good as well. And one big exhaust in the middle. You can see a little bit of road damage there or something. Nothing serious. Tires are about half gone, but they're still good. So let's go ahead and get this thing on the ground. Really nothing to speak of under here. So there you have it. For those of you who didn't know, the Chrysler Crossfire is a Mercedes-Benz SLK underneath the skin. Now you know that. I also know that the valve cover gaskets are not leaking at the moment because the engine won't start. But once we get this thing running again, they're going to start leaking again. It's going to start dripping on the ground. So that's something we'll present to the customer and see if they'd like to get it fixed. Also, we saw the transmission mount is collapsed. So we'll see what the customer wants to do, and then we'll take care of those things on the car and get this car back on the road and back running again. So if you're curious what kind of tools we're going to use to fix this car, check my Amazon affiliates link in the description below. We get a small cut and we really appreciate it. And there's some really cool cars that came into the shop today. You definitely want to hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.